All right, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Vicky 3 Academy. I'm Walker, and we're discussing probably one of the most complicated subjects in Victoria 3, which is how to industrialize. So before we do how to industrialize, I think I want to do a little bit of framing for you, which is why to industrialize, and then also sort of like how it occurred historically. So that way, when we get to the main things that you're going to be transforming, whoop, you're going to be transforming your laws, you're going to be transforming your technology, you're going to be transforming your interest groups, and you're going to be transforming the nature of the building, the physical capital of your society. And those are the four main changes that we're going to go through when it comes to how to industrialize in Victoria 3. But just very briefly, I want to give you some historical background here. So the Industrial Revolution has a couple of main phases. I'm going to put a link to a good YouTube video somewhere in the description, and they cover a lot of what the various historical forces that led to the Industrial Revolution really are. But I just want to show you just dramatically, like this is 1927 here. Look at the world. Look what is happening in the world's population in this time frame. And also for those of you who like don't remember, like, wow, whoa, that's an incredible and dramatic increase in Asia, keep in mind that like this is a really bad time in China, and so these numbers could be even higher if they wanted to be. This is our world in data, by the way. It's a great way to visualize data. And this is the GDP graph, right? Look at what we're playing through. This is the world that we are playing in, by the way. Just in case you're like, is the GDP go up line, like, is that at all reasonable? Well, I don't know. You tell me. Is the GDP line like at all reasonable? We can make it pretty tight, and the tighter we make it, like, all right, that means that it is only going up roughly 7 times in the entire world over this time frame. I mean, that's still a lot. Maybe it's closer to 6. Yeah, it's closer to 6, but like that means the GDP of the world needs to go up times 6 over the course of this game. All right, good luck. That's the race that you're in against yourself. At the same time, of course, we're going to have some pretty dramatic shifts in terms of our population, right? We can narrow this field up, and this is something that I would encourage everybody to play around with. It's very fun. So the more, obviously, the more like you flatten it out, or the more you narrow it in, the more it's going to flatten out, simply because of when the population explosion was really occurring. But this is still like very dramatic. Whenever you would, if you were to aim at any other couple 100 years, you would just have flat lines more or less throughout human history. And of course, this oblivates the last century, which is whoa. But yeah, that's the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is this line go up. The Industrial Revolution comes from a lot of different areas. It also comes from, this is an important thing, it comes from also the distribution of risk and reward in the 17th and 18th century in terms of global trade. So that the EU4 time period, you see a lot of money moving around in terms of global trade. But because of the Canton system in China, a lot of that money was staying either with very small business proprietors, or it was going to the government. Whereas over here, because of the way that they were using companies to defray risk, you had a lot more money ending up in the hands of private citizens, and then that money in the hands of the private citizens went out in search of something, sort of like the Night Walker in Princess Mononoke, you know, like headless and observing the universe, and it ended up doing things. It ended up just having a destructive and creative force at the same time, and it meant that the people with money would like buy gigantic agricultural plots from other less fortunate nobles who were not able to participate in it, or they would purchase massive areas inside of towns, because of course the laws, the sumptuary laws, and also the ownership laws in regards to purchasing land were generally more liberal in cities in Europe during this time frame than they were in rural areas. And so that meant that like if you were rich during the 18th century, the chances were a lot better that you would be buying a villa in Paris than, like, you know, some land in the middle of nowhere in Bavaria, not only because it was probably going to get you more money and more power and more access to money and power, but also because like there were probably laws that literally meant that you couldn't do that. But that's just the beginning of the setup for their society, right? All these people start getting a whole bunch of money, and the money starts getting them to like buy privileges and prestige by buying, you know, a count or an earldom somewhere, but they were also buying these urban areas, and the urban areas came with population density, and population density means that it's a lot easier to conduct specialized economic behavior. That's why you see specialized economic behavior all over the world, starting with like the development of agriculture, because if you have a food surplus, then people can specialize. But specialization becomes further honed and specialized within an urban area because you can bring specialists together. You can harness them together. And that's why you see the emergence of things like textile mills with hand-sewn clothes owned by shopkeepers who would be the petite bourgeoisie, right? Hand-sewn clothes is active in the building is the requirement for merchant guilds. And that's this, and that's the sort of economic behavior that would have been going on that would have been either pre-industrial or early industrial. And that's a method of production that's going to be locked here. And that should tell you right away, that there is an enormous amount of interplay between these systems in Victoria 3. So, what are the systems? How are we going to modify them? Why do they matter? The main systems we're going to be working with are laws, technology, interest groups, and construction, because all of these things are interconnected and they will all support one another. Laws. The first thing when it comes to laws and industrialization is the same thing that I'm going to drill down every single time. Get rid of your landowner laws. Landowner laws are bad. Anything that landowners are in favor of, except for like dedicated police force, pretty much are just bad laws. These are not laws that you want to have on the books ever. And especially the ones that they're going to like really fight you on, the ones that they're like dramatically in favor of, those laws are just garbage. Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, Jesus Christ, like traditionalism, isolationism, like mercantilism is okay. We can have a conversation about that at a later point. And the fact that they offer you landed voting is fun, because that offers you a way to fight the landowners. But like basically every single law that they want is terrible, because it's all designed to like keep your society pre-industrial. And remember, line go up, right? The our world in data, this line does not lie. You need this. You need this. If you don't get this, then what are you doing? Get line go up. And way to get line go up is to get rid of landowner laws. They're bad. After you've gotten rid of landowner laws, then the second industrial revolution kind of comes in behind. So the second industrial revolution is that second time frame here, between not 1820 and 1870, when the GDP goes from 1.2 trillion to 1.92, but from 1.92 to 3.42 between 1870 and 1900, and then, wow, up to 4.74 in 1913. Geez, like it's like straight up, right? And that's the second industrial revolution. And that's where you're going to see the government starting to do stuff like public health insurance or whatever, just like keep your pops alive and doing things. You're going to have liberalization of citizenship laws, because that's going to allow pops to move around more freely in the world. You're going to see the liberalization of economic models and trade policies in a way that's going to favor trade between countries. And by favoring trade between countries, they aren't necessarily favoring the pops in those countries, but like free trade is generally going to be reducing costs for people, and generally is going to be increasing profits for people. So generally the expansion of free trade in the time period between basically from EU4 up through the end of Victoria 3 is gonna be one of the things contributing to the line go up. And so you do need to be like aware of like all of these historical forces that are here in your laws, because the ones that are here in your laws are going to help you determine how industrialized you are, and how industrialized you can become soon, and what you should be trying to prioritize if your goal is to grow. And so, you know, like look for things like this, like the ability to switch into proportional taxation, right? Look for potentially maybe switch into laissez-faire, or maybe switch into command economy as you move into a later part of your industrialization phase. Maybe you switch into a republic, including a council republic. The exact nature of the industrial society that you take on is actually going to be extremely flexible, except in two ways, and that's serfdom and slavery. And the reason is simply because those are both going to have awful impacts on distribution of wealth, and also like literally where people can work. So just so you know, slaves, they can't work in these urban center construction buildings. They can't do it. They're not allowed to. And so, like, if you want to industrialize, you cannot have slavery there. And if you want to industrialize, you also probably cannot have serfdom there, if for only the reason that it's gonna mean more money is gonna be going towards Russia is a good example. The more serfs that you have, the lower their standard of living is going to be, because of their standard of living is only coming from their subsistence farming, which is limited. It's just awful. So, like, serfdom's really bad for your pops. Serfdom is going to increase the grain, but decrease the subsistence output. So what that means is, if you have serfdom, you will have considerably more grain in your market, which is going to in turn keep the price of grain down. But because the price of grain is going to be the thing that's going to be determining a lot of the wealth of the peasants working on these subsistence farms, they're not going to get paid anything because there's just too much grain, right? And then they also don't get paid anything because their subsistence output is only 3 instead of 4. And so this is getting out of serfdom is one of these things that is innocuous on the surface. You're like, all right, cool, 50% landowners, whatever. Because like the serfs, you can just build them to death, right? You can just build an infinite number of urban buildings and you'll just drain all the peasants. But it's so much worse than that, and it's going to take you a long time to build them. You need to get rid of this. Serfdom is terrible. It's just awful. All right, so aside from landowner laws and potential tweaks into the mid and late game on how to address your industrial capacity, you probably also need to be doing some liberalization in regards to citizenship laws just to encourage migration, because you are going to notice as you build that you're going to run out of pops pretty quickly. Like I ran out of pops in the 1850s as France is. In the 1860s is the Ottoman Empire. Like you're just gonna build all your peasants away. Even as Qing, you're gonna build all your peasants away. And so you need to be fairly liberal just to attract people to your country. And so you need to make adjustments on the fly, right? Your plan when it comes to your laws needs to be fixed to, or at least influenced by, the country that you're currently in, and the situation they find themselves in, because the laws will be gated by the IGs that you can put into power, and then your chance to succeed on passing them is going to come from the cloud of the IGs in question. So on that note, let's talk very briefly about IGs. As you build things and construct buildings that have jobs other than subsistence farms, you are going to employ these workforces, and those people are largely going to be associated with other IGs, like non-gentry IGs, landed gentry assembly or landowner IGs. And it's because of the pop types. So the pop types, they're going to be interest groups are going to draw them into different directions based off of the pop type and the popularity of and characteristics of the leaders of the different IGs. And so it's not like destiny, but it is heavily influenced. And so if you want to destroy a pre-industrial economy, then you just build it to death, right? You just build it to death. You can also, I don't want to skip too far over the IG part, but IG, I think I'm just going to do a separate video on ideologies and IGs, and that'll be helpful for anyone trying to use IGs when it comes to doing law work. So keep an eye out for that. I'm gonna do that video. But basically what you need to take away is that your legitimacy is going to influence the speed with which you can roll on your law changes. And so you need to keep your legitimacy high, but while keeping your legitimacy high, you're going to notice that you're going to have difficulty sometimes with getting some of these laws passed, simply because like you don't want to pass things that are going to make your landowners stronger, right? You're going to want to pass things that are not going to do that in order to industrialize. And so you have to be really careful. Yeah, so your IGs, they're going to come from what you build, and they're going to come also from your methods of production. That's an important thing that is going to be kind of rolled up and split between your construction and your technology and your laws, because of the way methods of production are generated. They're going to come some from your laws, like state religion disallows multiple production methods, hereditary bureaucrats unlocks hereditary bureaucrats, and disallows professional bureaucrats. Mercantilism determines who owns your trade centers, and therefore who benefits from trade. You see, there's a lot of things from your laws that are going to influence your interest groups. Your interest groups in turn are going to influence which laws you can pass. And of course, these things are going to be coming not just from your laws, but also from your technology. There's this massive expansion of technology in the 19th century, and it's going to be mostly aimed at trying to capture more productivity per pop. So automation is part of it, but also just like, can you use input goods to supplement or replace labor in other ways other than automation? If so, great, right? Like spun silk is a really great way to do it, because you've offloaded the labor costs somewhere else. That's what the critical technology video series is for people to just get an idea of like which technologies I think are important when it comes to industrialization. But these are going to not only transform the methods of production that you have access to locally, but also just the actual buildings that you can build. And so you can see like the more stuff that you have where you're changing the pop types in your society around, the more you're going to be changing over here. And so we should talk about construction. So we already have had a conversation about how to use construction to build up your GDP. But because industrialization is going to mean something different than just making more money, I want to help you conceptualize it in terms of the methods of production here. So here's a great example of how to look at this stuff. This is a merchant guild owned textile mill, right? They own a piece of land in an urban area, and that piece of land allows them to bring a lot of pops together and put them into a building and give them the resources necessary to make clothes, and then they profit off of it, and they use the population density of an urban space to bring people together. But they're not really using any other sort of input capital other than the property that they own and the people that they are employing, right? They're doing hand-sewn clothes. They're using needles and thread, and they're not even using fancy input goods like silk, so they can make fancy clothes. Not doing any of that. They're just doing hand-sewn clothes. But in the event that you've invented lathe, in the event that you've come up with this technology, you can start to change the input goods, not just in terms of the like input goods here, but the input goods up here, right? This is going to have an increasing capital cost up front, not in the game, like in real life, right? It's going to cost you more when you're trying to set up a business to do it if you have to buy mechanical sewing machines than if you can get people to work with needles and thread, right? That's true. And so what that means is, as you use your construction to build things that are going to help you first grow, because that is your first goal as an industrializing society, as a society that's just simply trying to build your peasants away, you need to grow your construction. That's your first goal. And then after you've grown your construction, you want to make sure that you are not overpaying for construction goods, because of course construction goods are not free. They are expensive depending on the nature of your market. Sometimes they are ridiculously expensive depending on the nature of your market and the methods of production that your construction sectors are using. So you need to be aware of that, right? So if you want to remove all peasants from your society as Russia, then you probably want to follow the standard of living guide, because that is going to lead you down the path of industrialization. But the path of industrialization is going to be build construction, build construction goods, so that way you can make sure that your construction goods are relatively inexpensive, build urban jobs that employ peasants. Don't be afraid to automate to get rid of laborers, because laborers are just terrible. Also, it's going to increase demand for tooling workshops, which aren't necessarily like a thematic component to industrialization outside of Victoria 3, but kind of also are. Like, the emergence of machine tools in the 19th century is up there with like the consumption of fossil fuels in terms of the importance on the Industrial Revolution. So neglect tooling workshops and die is my personal recommendation when it comes to industrialization in Victoria 3. But you need to be flexible to the situation that you find yourself in, right? Russia doesn't start with 0 tools. Russia starts with 3. Russia starts with a meaningful number of textile mills. Russia starts with an industrialist at 13%. Japan starts with an industrialist at 0.6%. These are not the same. Even though some of their laws are extremely similar and there's some overlap there, they're not the same. And you should and the number one mission that I'm on this channel is to encourage people to play this game carefully, because it's complicated and there's a lot of stuff, and the learnings that you're going to pick up from one area are going to transfer to another, but only if you help them get there. Because again, anytime you're moving around, even like Austria, right? Austria is also going to have a different distribution of power in here, right? Their petit bourgeoisie are non-existent in Austria. How is that possible? Well, are they not conducting a lot of trade? That might be it. Why are they so weak, right? You want to discover these sorts of things. All right. Well, it sounds like the maintenance is doing stuff. I'm gonna edit this video and get it out to you guys. If this was useful, then like and subscribe. Like, I wanted to get this video out even if I released it on Tuesday, because people had questions about this, and so I wanted to be able to answer it for them in a timely fashion.